From deliberately dyeing child actors' hair to hiring future comedy legends before they became famous, this forgotten Saturday morning show hid decades-spanning connections to beloved sitcoms, employed a future soap opera icon as a 10-year-old, and almost never made it to air, until its producer used it to apologize for ruining 2 careers on the Brady Bunch. Fact 1. An apology show for 2 Brady Bunch casualties. Big John, Little John wasn't just another Saturday morning show. It was actually Sherwood Schwartz's way of saying sorry to 2 actors whose Brady Bunch experiences had gone terribly wrong. The legendary producer, who created both Gilligan's Island and the Brady Bunch, felt he owed something to Joyce Bulifant and Robbie Rist, and he used this 1976 series to make amends. Joyce Bulifant's story was particularly painful. She had actually been cast as Carol Brady and was already fully committed to the role. She went through costume fittings, picked out her character's wardrobe, including a beautiful yellow dress for the wedding scene and a smart blue suit for after the ceremony, and even endured a brutal weight loss regimen that left her bruised and starving. The network made her lose 5 pounds in just 1 week through aggressive massage treatments and an all-eggs and tomatoes diet because they worried her round face would look even rounder on television. Just days before filming was set to begin, Sherwood Schwartz and director John Rich had to tell her she was being replaced by Florence Henderson, who the studio preferred. Schwartz later explained that executives felt Bulifant would make the show more like The Lucy Show, while Henderson would give it a Donna Reed show vibe. Robbie Rist's situation was different, but equally frustrating. He was brought onto the Brady Bunch during its final season as Cousin Oliver, a younger character meant to inject fresh youth into the aging cast. The writers quickly realized adding him was a mistake, but by then it was too late. The show was canceled anyway, and Rist became infamous for what's now called Cousin Oliver syndrome, when shows desperately add a cute kid to boost ratings. By creating Big John, Little John, and casting both actors in leading roles, Schwartz tried to give them the opportunities the Brady Bunch had taken away. Fact 2. The Zucker brothers wrote for this before Airplane, before they became comedy legends responsible for Airplane. And the Naked Gun, the Zucker-Abraham Zucker team, known as ZAS, was writing material for a forgotten Saturday morning kids show about a teacher who randomly turned into a 12-year-old. David Zucker, Jerry Zucker, and Jim Abrahams all contributed scripts to Big John, Little John, during a pivotal moment in their careers, right when they were transitioning from underground comedy theater to mainstream Hollywood success. The timing of their involvement makes this even more remarkable. The trio had just finished creating The Kentucky Fried movie in 1977, which was a collection of sketches that caught the attention of movie studios, and they were actively developing what would become their breakthrough hit Airplane when Sherwood Schwartz brought them onto his Saturday morning series. Working on Big John, Little John gave them experience writing for network television at a time when they were still figuring out how to translate their irreverent comedy style for broader audiences. One episode in particular stands out as their contribution. The Zaz team wrote the final episode of the series called Abracadabra, which aired on December 4, 1976. In this episode, a student character named Homer becomes convinced that he has magical powers after he believes he made Little John transform into Big John during a magic trick performance. The episode featured the kind of mistaken identity comedy and absurd situations that would later become hallmarks of the Zaz style in their more famous films. It's fascinating to think that these comedy pioneers, who would go on to define the parody genre for an entire generation, were once grinding out scripts for a low-budget children's show that barely lasted 3 months on the air. Their involvement shows how even legendary filmmakers have to start somewhere, taking whatever work they can get while building toward their bigger creative ambitions. Fact 3. Both stars reunited on the Jerry Lewis Telethon. After Big John, Little John was canceled in December of 1976. Most people assumed that was the last time Herb Edelman and Robbie Rist would ever share a screen together, but fate had one more appearance in store for the duo. In 1977, both actors reunited for a segment on the Jerry Lewis MDA Telethon, the annual charity event that raised money for the Muscular Dystrophy Association, giving fans of the short-lived series one final chance to see their on-screen chemistry. The Jerry Lewis MDA Telethon was a massive television event that aired for over 20 hours each Labor Day weekend, featuring celebrities, musical performances, and comedy sketches, all designed to encourage donations for muscular dystrophy research. The Telethon regularly brought together actors from various shows and movies for special reunion segments, and someone at the production decided that Edelman and Rist were worth bringing back together despite their show's brief run and quick cancellation. While specific details about what they performed during their Telethon appearance haven't been widely documented, the fact that they were invited at all suggests that Big John, Little John had left enough of an impression on viewers during its 3-month run to make the reunion meaningful to audiences. The Telethon appearance also showed that both actors were willing to embrace their association with the show rather than distance themselves from what many considered a flop. This Telethon reunion represents a bittersweet moment in the show's history, serving as both a final goodbye to the characters and a reminder of what might have been if the series had been given more time to find its audience. For the handful of fans who remembered the show fondly, seeing Big John and Little John together again, even briefly, must have felt like a small gift. Fact 4. Hair dye and toupees made them match. The entire premise of Big John, Little John relied on viewers believing that Herb Edelman and Robbie Rist were playing the same person at different ages, which created an immediate problem because the two actors looked absolutely nothing alike. To sell the illusion that a 40-something balding science teacher could transform into a 12-year-old boy, the production team had to resort to some creative cosmetic solutions that involved changing both actors' natural appearances in significant ways. Robbie Rist arrived on set with his natural blonde hair, which was completely wrong for the character they needed him to play. The production team made the decision to dye his hair brown, so it would at least somewhat match Herb Edelman's darker coloring, forcing the young actor to maintain this artificial hair color throughout the entire production. On the other side of the equation, Herb Edelman was dealing with male pattern baldness that made him look distinctly middle-aged, so the costume department fitted him with a hairpiece that partially covered his bald spots and gave him a fuller head of hair that could plausibly belong to someone who might have looked like Little John as a child. The strangest part of this whole arrangement was that Edelman only wore the hairpiece during the actual filmed episodes, but when it came time to shoot the opening and closing credit sequences, he appeared without it, showing his natural balding head. This created a bizarre inconsistency where Big John looked different in the credits than he did in the show itself, almost as if the production was acknowledging that they weren't really trying that hard to make the transformation believable. Despite all these efforts with hair dye and toupees, the two actors still didn't look particularly similar, making the age-changing premise even more absurd than it already was. Fact 5. A future soap star started here at age 10. Hidden among the cast of Big John, Little John was a 10-year-old actor named Christophe St. John who played a student character called Homer. And while most of the show has been forgotten by television history, his career took off in ways that nobody could have predicted back in 1976. St. John would go on to become one of the most recognizable faces in daytime television, achieving a level of success and longevity that far exceeded anything the show itself accomplished. After Big John, Little John ended, Christophe St. John continued working as a child actor through various television appearances. But his big break came in 1991 when he was cast as Neil Winters on the CBS daytime soap opera, The Young and the Restless. What started as a 4-episode run turned into a remarkable 28-year tenure on the show, making him the longest-serving African-American actor in the series' history. His portrayal of Neil Winters, a cosmetics executive dealing with complex family dynamics and personal struggles, earned him widespread acclaim and made him a beloved figure in the soap opera community. St. John's work on The Young and the Restless brought him significant recognition within the industry, including 2 Daytime Emmy Awards. He won his first Emmy in 1992 for Outstanding Younger Actor in a Drama Series, and then won again in 2008 for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series, along with receiving 9 additional nominations throughout his career. The writers on Big John, Little John apparently recognized his talent early, as he was frequently given choice lines and memorable moments in episodes, with his buoyant personality allowing him to shine even when the material wasn't particularly strong. Tragically, Christophe St. John passed away in February of 2019 at age 52. Fact 6. Only 13 episodes in 3 months. Big John, Little John had an incredibly brief life on television, premiering on September 11, 1976, and airing its final episode on December 4th of the same year, which means the entire series lasted just under 3 months from start to finish. NBC produced exactly 13 episodes before pulling the plug, making this one of the fastest cancellations in Sherwood Schwartz's career and a shocking contrast to his previous successes with Gilligan's Island and The Brady Bunch, which both ran for multiple seasons and became cultural phenomena. The show's rapid cancellation was particularly surprising given Schwartz's track record and the fact that networks typically gave new shows more time to find their audience back in the 1970s. Saturday morning programming was also generally more forgiving than prime time, with lower expectations for ratings and performance. Yet Big John, Little John couldn't even survive a single full season. The production schedule was tight, with all 13 episodes filmed and ready to air in quick succession, giving the network little flexibility if they wanted to make changes or adjustments based on viewer feedback. For comparison, Gilligan's Island ran for 3 seasons and 98 episodes, while The Brady Bunch lasted 5 seasons and produced 117 episodes. So Big John, Little John represented a dramatic fall from grace for Schwarz. The creator had clearly hoped this would become another long-running hit that would continue generating revenue through syndication for years to come. But instead, he ended up with barely enough episodes to fill a quarterly programming block. The show's failure was so complete that it never received the rerun treatment that kept. Schwartz's other creations, alive in popular culture, instead fading into obscurity almost immediately after its December cancellation, remembered only by the small handful of children who happened to catch it during its brief original run. Fact 7. Filmed on cheap videotape, then transferred. Big John, Little John was produced using a cost-cutting technique that seriously damaged its visual quality, as the entire show was shot on videotape and then transferred to film for a broadcast, resulting in a rough and unappealing look that made it stand out for all the wrong reasons compared to other television shows of the era. This production method was unusual for the time and represented a significant step backward for Sherwood Schwartz, who had worked on much more polished productions like Gilligan's Island and The Brady Bunch that were filmed using traditional methods with substantially larger budgets. The videotape to film transfer process created numerous visual problems that viewers could immediately notice when watching the show. The picture quality was grainy and lacked the crispness that audiences expected from television programming. Even Saturday morning children's shows, which typically had lower production values than primetime series. Beyond the transfer issues, the show suffered from tacky set construction that looked cheap and unconvincing, with the main locations being a bland classroom and a generic living room that lacked any distinctive character or visual interest. Even more troubling was the lighting situation, which was so poorly executed that it became one of the most memorable aspects of the show for all the wrong reasons. Television productions are almost always well lit as a basic standard of professional production, but Big John, Little John managed to have scenes that were noticeably dim or inconsistently illuminated, making it nearly unique among broadcast shows for having such obvious lighting problems. The editing was equally crude, with clunky transitions and awkward pacing that suggested the post-production team was either inexperienced or working under severe time and budget constraints. All of these technical shortcomings combined to create a viewing experience that felt amateurish and cheap, which likely contributed to the show's quick cancellation. Fact 8. The opening credits featured random people. The opening credit sequence of Big John, Little John was supposed to show the transformation process of John Martin aging and de-aging between his adult and child forms, but instead of using photos or images that actually resembled Herb Edelman or Robbie Rist, the producers used pictures of completely random actors who looked nothing like either of the show's stars. This bizarre choice created a jarring disconnect where viewers watching the credits would see a progression of faces that bore no resemblance to the characters they were about to watch in the actual episodes, making an already absurd premise even more ridiculous. Some observers have suggested that this odd decision was actually intentional on Sherwood Schwartz's part, as if he was deliberately winking at the audience and acknowledging that the entire concept was too silly to take seriously, rather than investing time and money into finding actors or models who could convincingly bridge the gap between a balding middle-aged man and a 12-year-old boy. Schwarz seemed content to just throw together whatever images were available and let viewers figure it out for themselves. The opening credits essentially told audiences not to worry too much about the logic or believability of the transformation, since even the show itself wasn't particularly concerned with making it look realistic. This cavalier attitude toward visual continuity extended beyond just the credits and reflected the overall approach to the show's production. Between the random aging photos in the credits, the hair dye and toupee situation, and Edelman appearing without his hairpiece during credit sequences, it became clear that Big John, Little John was never seriously trying to sell the illusion that these two actors were playing the same person, instead embracing the absurdity and hoping that young Saturday morning viewers wouldn't care too much about the details. Fact 9. Joyce Bulifant later appeared in Airplane with Z. Joyce Bulifant's connection to the Zucker-Abraham Zucker comedy team didn't end when Big John, Little John was canceled, as she went on to appear in their 1980 blockbuster hit Airplane, creating an unexpected link between a forgotten Saturday morning children's show and one of the most successful comedy films ever made. This reunion happened 4 years after their collaboration on the short-lived series, by which time Zaz had evolved from television writers struggling to make a name for themselves into major Hollywood filmmakers with a distinctive comedic voice. In Airplane, Bulifant played the role of Mrs. Davis, the mother of a young girl who needs a heart transplant, and the casting included a clever inside reference that connected multiple television shows together in an interesting way. Her character's daughter was played by Jill Whelan, who was already appearing as Vicky Stubbing on The Love Boat at the time, playing the daughter of the ship's captain, portrayed by Gavin MacLeod. This created a multi-layered television connection because MacLeod and Bulifant had previously played a married couple on The Mary Tyler Moore Show, where she portrayed Marie Slaughter and he played her husband Murray, meaning that Airplane essentially reunited MacLeod's two fictional television families in a single movie. The fact that Zaz remembered Bulifant and chose to cast her in Airplane suggests that they had a positive working relationship during their time on Big John, Little John, even though that show was a commercial failure that disappeared quickly from television. It also demonstrates how professional relationships in Hollywood can persist across projects and years, with early collaborations sometimes leading to opportunities on much bigger and more successful productions down the line when the right circumstances align. Fact 10. The show was part of an anti-cartoon movement. Big John, Little John debuted on NBC in September of 1976 during a crucial moment when television networks were actively trying to distance themselves from animated programming on Saturday mornings, responding to mounting pressure from parent groups and advocacy organizations who believed that cartoons were exposing children to excessive violence and inappropriate content. The networks made a deliberate strategic shift toward live-action shows like Big John, Little John, in an attempt to prove they could provide educational and wholesome entertainment without relying on the animation format that had dominated children's television for decades. Throughout the mid-1970s, parent advocacy groups had been raising concerns about action cartoons that featured fighting, weapons, and conflict-driven storylines, arguing that this type of content was harmful to young viewers and contributed to aggressive behavior in children. Networks responded by commissioning more live-action sitcoms and educational programs that featured real actors in more grounded scenarios, hoping this would satisfy critics and demonstrate their commitment to responsible programming. Big John, Little John fit perfectly into this strategy because it featured human actors in a family-friendly comedy format with a fantastical premise that didn't involve violence or combat of any kind. The irony of this situation is that the live-action programming push didn't necessarily result in higher quality shows, as evidenced by Big John, Little John's low budget, poor production values, and quick cancellation. The networks were essentially replacing well-produced animated shows with cheaply made live-action alternatives that often failed to connect with audiences or achieve the educational goals that parent groups were demanding. This period of television history represents a time when external pressure and public relations concerns drove programming decisions more than creative quality or viewer satisfaction. Fact 11. A family affair behind the scenes. Big John, Little John was truly a Schwarz family production in every sense of the phrase, with Sherwood Schwarz not only creating and producing the show, but also bringing his son Lloyd and his brother Albert on board to handle writing and production duties, essentially keeping the entire creative operation within the family. This collaborative approach meant that almost every major decision about the show's direction, storylines, and characters was made by members of the same family working together in what was probably a fairly unique arrangement, even by Hollywood standards. Lloyd Schwarz had already worked with his father on previous projects and was building his own career as a television writer and producer, so his involvement in Big John, Little John represented a continuation of their professional partnership rather than nepotism or favoritism. The younger Schwarz contributed to writing multiple episodes and helped shape the show's comedic tone, though he was working within the constraints of a tight budget and simplified Saturday morning format that didn't allow for the kind of sophisticated storytelling that his father had achieved with Gilligan's Island and the Brady Bunch. Albert Schwarz, Sherwood's brother, rounded out the family trio by taking on production responsibilities and likely contributing to the business and logistical side of creating the series. Having family members in key creative positions can sometimes be beneficial because it allows for frank discussions and honest feedback without the political complications that often arise in professional relationships. But it can also create echo chambers where everyone thinks too similarly and outside perspectives are missing. In the case of Big John, Little John, the family-centered approach didn't prevent the show from suffering the same fate as many other low-budget Saturday morning experiments, with poor production values and weak scripts, ultimately leading to its quick cancellation, despite the combined efforts of 3 members of the Schwarz family. Fact 12. DVD release, delayed by legal battles. The complete series of Big John, Little John finally became available on DVD in 2009 when a British company called Fabulous Films released all 13 episodes in the United Kingdom. But fans in the United States and Canada had to wait several more years before they could legally purchase the show because of complicated legal issues that prevented a North American release. These distribution rights problems kept the series locked away from American audiences until 2012. When VCI Entertainment managed to navigate through the legal obstacles and secure the necessary permissions to release the show domestically, making it the first Sherwood Schwarz failure to receive an official DVD release in any region. The exact nature of the legal complications that delayed the North American release has never been fully explained to the public, but rights issues are notoriously complex in the television industry, especially for older shows where ownership may have changed hands multiple times over the decades, or where contracts from the 1970s contained vague language about future distribution formats that didn't exist when the agreements were originally signed. DVD and home video rights are separate from broadcast rights, and sometimes different companies or individuals hold different pieces of the distribution puzzle, requiring extensive negotiations and legal work before a show can be properly released. The fact that Big John, Little John became the first Schwarz flop to receive a DVD release is somewhat ironic, considering that his successful shows like Gilligan's Island and the Brady Bunch had been available on home video for many years before anyone bothered to release this short-lived Saturday morning series. The DVD release allowed a new generation of curious viewers to discover the show and understand why it failed so quickly, with many reviewers noting that while it had nostalgic value for people who remembered watching it as children, the poor production quality and weak scripts didn't hold up well for modern audiences. Fact 13. Herb Edelman later played Dorothy's ex on Golden Girls. Herb Edelman's career reached its highest point nearly a decade after Big John, Little John ended, when he was cast as Stanley Zbornak on the NBC sitcom The Golden Girls, playing the unreliable ex-husband of Dorothy Zbornak, portrayed by B. Arthur. This recurring role became Edelman's most memorable and beloved character, completely overshadowing his earlier work on the failed Saturday morning show and giving him the kind of recognition and critical acclaim that had eluded him throughout most of his career as a character actor. Stanley Zbornak appeared periodically throughout the Golden Girls run from 1985 to 1992, usually showing up to cause problems for Dorothy or ask for favors despite having left her years earlier for a younger woman. Edelman brought a perfect mix of charm and sleaziness to the character, making Stanley simultaneously pathetic and oddly endearing in a way that allowed audiences to understand why Dorothy had once loved him while also completely supporting her decision to divorce him. The chemistry between Edelman and Arthur was excellent, with their scenes together providing some of the show's most emotionally resonant moments alongside the comedy. Edelman's work on The Golden Girls earned him 2 Emmy Award nominations for Outstanding Guest Performer in a comedy series in 1986 through 87 and 1987 through 88, bringing him the kind of industry recognition that validated his decades of work as a supporting player in television and film. Standing 6 feet 5 inches tall, with a distinctly ethnic appearance and a prematurely balding head, Edelman had spent years playing character roles without ever becoming a leading man. But his portrayal of Stan Zbornak finally gave him a signature role that audiences remembered and appreciated long after the show ended. Fact 14. The premise included a bizarre loophole. The entire concept of Big John, Little John rested on a peculiar piece of magical logic that the writers established in the pilot episode, where they explained that John Martin's transformation problem existed specifically because he had only taken a small sip from the fountain of youth rather than drinking fully from it. According to the show's internal mythology, if John had consumed a full drink of the water during his vacation in Florida, he would have permanently transformed into a 12-year-old boy and stayed that way forever. But because he only sipped a small amount, the effect was incomplete and caused him to randomly shift between his adult and child forms without any ability to control when the changes would happen. This arbitrary rule created the show's central comedic premise, while simultaneously raising all sorts of questions that the writers never bothered to address. The logic suggested that the fountain of youth had some kind of dosage-based effect, where the amount of water consumed determined whether the transformation would be permanent or temporary. But the show never explained how this system worked or why partial consumption would result in uncontrollable morphing rather than just a weaker or slower effect. It also raised the uncomfortable question of why John didn't simply return to Florida and drink more water to either complete the transformation or possibly reverse it entirely. The writers seemed aware that this premise was fundamentally absurd and didn't spend much time trying to justify it with detailed explanations or consistent rules. Episodes would occasionally show John attempting to find a cure for his condition through various scientific or pseudoscientific means, but the show never seriously explored the possibility of him going back to the source of his problem and experimenting with different amounts of water to see if he could gain control over the transformations or make them stop completely. Fact 15. Many fans think it was a fever dream. Big John, Little John has achieved a strange kind of cult status in the decades since its cancellation, not because people remember it fondly, but because so many viewers have vague, hazy memories of the show that they convinced themselves they had imagined the entire thing. Robbie Rist himself has acknowledged this phenomenon in interviews, mentioning that when episodes of the show appeared on YouTube years later, the comment sections filled up with people expressing shock and relief that the bizarre program they half remembered from their childhood had actually existed and wasn't just a fever dream or false memory they had somehow created. The show's obscurity combined with its absurd premise created the perfect conditions for this kind of collective uncertainty about whether it had really happened. People who watched Big John, Little John as children in 1976 saw it during its brief 3-month run and then never encountered it again because it was never rerun or syndicated like other Saturday morning shows from that era. Decades later, they would have fragmentary memories of a show where a teacher randomly turned into a kid, but without any way to confirm these memories or find evidence that such a program had actually aired, many viewers assumed they must have dreamed it or confused it with something else. When clips and full episodes finally became available online through YouTube and other platforms, it triggered a wave of recognition and validation for people who had been questioning their own memories for years. The comment sections became filled with variations of the same sentiment, with viewers expressing amazement that this weird show had been real all along and wasn't just something their imagination had invented during childhood. Rist found this reaction amusing and somewhat flattering, as it demonstrated that the show had left enough of an impression to linger in people's memories even if they couldn't quite believe what they were remembering was real.